Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Poddin My Noggin. My name is CK Sims, your host, and today we are joined by quite an interesting person. If you do a little deep dive on this guy, you're going to find a lot of really cool stuff. Dr. John Giordano. Say it for me. I think I said it right first.
It could be Giordano, whatever floats your boat. It's okay.
How would you pronounce it?
Dr. John Giordano.
Okay, perfect. So welcome to the podcast. I was mentioning to John just before we started recording, one of his many cool things he's done in his life is he's, been interviewed by the likes of Katie Couric and Wolf Blitzer and Geraldo. And here I am thinking, wow, okay, well, thanks for coming on my podcast. They're in a different league, of course. But I do appreciate you coming on my podcast and having.
I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So, John, I wrote down some accolades, okay, that I was able to find. Not just for anybody listening at home. This is not all of them because I don't have that much time in the show. But just to start off, just a light sort of introduction. You've had over 73 peer-reviewed medical journals.
It's 80 now.
It's 80 now. Okay, so
I get you keep the numbers straight. That's all.
You are a recipient of the Martin Luther King Award. You, I already said you interviewed with Katie Couric, Wolf Blitzer, Geraldo, and many others. You are a 10th degree black belt in karate and a black belt in jiu-jitsu and judo. You are a World Martial Arts Congress Hall of Fame inductee. You are an Ultimate Warrior Hall of Fame inductee. And you are the founder of G&G House, which we'll talk
Holistic
about.
Addiction Treatment Program.
There you go. Not to mention, just to wrap this up real nice, you got 3 books. The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up, How to Beat Your Addictions and Live a Quality Life, Proven Holistic Treatment for Addiction and Chronic Relapse. But then you also contributed to Molecular Neurobiology of Addiction Recovery, the 12 Steps Program and Fellowship. And that's just some, y'all. That's not all. It's just some of the things. So, first of all, wow. And congrats. But it didn't start out like that, did it?
Well, I don't think it.
Why don't we talk about how it started out?
Right, let's talk from the beginning of my journey.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, I have a lot of trauma in my life, so I want to go through the whole process.
Of course.
All right. First of all, I had a great family. They were wonderful human beings, but it was kind of like a mafia family. My father was a heroin dealer. My uncle was a hitman for the families. And my grandfather was a Shylock, so was my father. They collect, they lend you money, and if you don't pay, you pay one way or the other. The rest of my family were nefarious types. They did all kinds of different things. So when I was 8, my father got arrested, and he went to jail until I was 12. At 8.5, I got molested with some boys in the neighborhood. And it was very confusing because part of me liked it, and the other for just a moment in time. And the rest of it, I felt shame, guilt, and fear that my family would ever find out. And then when I was 9, I got molested by a girl in the neighborhood. She was 14. She was my babysitter. And then eventually I got into gangs. I was in a Hispanic gang, a black gang, an Irish gang, an Italian gang. I was in all kinds of different gangs. Then as time went on, I got left back in the 6th grade for being a clown, the class clown. So, looking back, with a lot of trauma in the life, which I didn't realize it was trauma. It was just, doing life. I'm an inner city kid. We were brought up in the South Bronx, the worst neighborhood in the South Bronx, and in the projects. So, when I got out of what happened was I wound up in karate. It's a whole story, so I'm going to make it short so we can get into stuff to help people more. Everybody's got this story. Anyway, I got into the karate class. The way I got into the karate class was I was with one of the gang members who were walking by a karate school, and he says, "Oh, I wonder how tough this guy is, this black belt." So we went upstairs to see who this guy was, and maybe I wanted to fight him and see if I could beat him up because I thought I was a big fighter. But let me digress a little bit. Going back, I wasn't like that when I was 9, 10. I got into gangs, I think, when I was 11. I was this little chubby kid, and kids used to pick on me all the time. I was always afraid to fight or anything like that. I used to get beat up. Um, so I went through all of that, and then one day I was watching television, and I was watching I forget, the Keystone Cops. That's an old program where these guys would move real fast and how they would fight and things like that. And I said, wow, I wonder if I could move fast like that, if I could beat these guys up. Well, when I came out of the house one morning, my neighbor who used to always pick on me, picked on me, and I just started swinging like wild. And I beat him up. Then I proceeded to beat up everybody in the neighborhood that picked on me. So I went through that, and then I went to gangs. And then at the gangs, at 14 and a half, I wanted to go upstairs and see if I could beat this karate teacher. But it was getting late, so I had to get home real quick because my father would hit us with the belt. He got back when I was 12, and he was very strict. So what happened was I went home. I said, look, I want to join the class. So my mother said no. My father says, yeah. They talked it out, and then finally they said it's okay. And I went back. I had to have a paper signed by my dad because this was 1962. So back then, you had to be at least 15 to join the class. So they allowed me to go. And then when I went upstairs, I'm sitting there. The guy is a little short guy with a round face and little chunky. And, I'm saying to myself, this guy, what? This guy's a tough guy? Forget about it. So anyway, he taught us how to roll and how to fall. And then he put us in a circle. And he said, all right, I'm going to teach you how to block a punch. So he said, I need a volunteer. So I raised my hand real quick. So he's talking to the class. I decided to sneak punch him. I suggest don't do that, by the way. Not a good idea. All of a sudden, I know I went up from point A to point B. I was on the floor. I had a foot in my throat, and his little round face looking down and smiling at me. And I looked up, and I says, man, I'm in love with this, because I had no clue how I got there. So then I really practiced hard and studied hard, and I became a champion in judo. I became under the jiu-jitsu team, and then I joined the karate after I made black belt in judo and jiu-jitsu. And I was very fortunate. I studied from 3 grandmasters. And back then, martial arts were completely different than they are now. Back then, it was more of a martial art, not so much of a sport, even though they had sport karate, but it wasn't like it was today at all. I mean, it was more a martial art.
And I was reading, actually, I think it was a previous podcast that I had mentioned how brutal the conditions were.
Oh, the training?
Yeah.
Oh, my teacher was, today he'd probably arrest him for training us the way he did. He was a Marine DI, which is a drill instructor. And what happened was in the summertime, they would close the doors, turn on the heat, and you would work out and doing duck walk, knuckle push-ups, walking around on your knuckles all around the school, hold your shoes in your hand until your arms fell off. I mean, on and on and on and on and on. Guys were throwing up. And if you threw up, he would get one guy threw up in class. He told him, pick it up, put it in your gear and get off the mat. And in the wintertime, they used to open the doors and the windows. We had to strip down to our gi pants, okay, and then run out in the ice cold weather around the block back into the school. Sometimes it would snow and you had to run in the snow barefooted.
So like mental conditioning.
Absolutely.
And physical, mental and physical.
Yeah, mental and physical. But all I can tell you, we had the toughest school around.
I'd have to imagine you did.
Yeah, no, we did. And that's how he became a champion in karate. I've won, I don't know how many national and international championships. And I've taught I have a lot of black belts that are champions. And I taught him the same way. Matter of fact, I have a blind student I had that I taught. He became a national karate champion in forms, but early on, I put him into a karate tournament. All right. And the guy that was running the show, the tournament said, "You can't put him in. He's blind." I said, "No, that's discrimination. And if you don't, I'll sue you." Right. So he said, "All right, you put him in." So I walked him into the center of the ring, just arm by arm, shoulder to shoulder, not with a cane. And, he bowed in and he was scared to death. And I said to him, "Look," he says, "but I can't see the guy." I said, "Look, he's in front of you, I promise you. Just do what I taught you." He beat the guy, right?
Fascinating.
And after the guy got beat, he found out that he was blind. All right. He sat down and cried, the guy. I mean, what do you say that a blind guy beat you?
Well, it's not. I can imagine how it would probably be very damaging to any ego he may have had. So,
Absolutely.
but
Ego was
perhaps
gone.
he was better off for being beaten by a blind guy. Who
Right.
knows?
So now, yeah, right.
Right?
So anyway, David became very kind of famous in the martial arts doing forms, and I had to blindfold myself in order to teach him because his reference points were different than a sighted person.
Yes.
So, and that's how I taught him. And then the forms are very difficult because there's angles, the technique has to be done a certain way. That's what would happen with that. So anyway, after that, I met a girl. I was 17 and a half. We came down to Florida. A friend of mine came over to the apartment that I was in and had this little vial of clear liquid. I said, "What's that?" I never did any drugs. I never even drank, He says, "Oh, that's LSD." I says, "Oh, really? I heard about this. This expands your mind and everything." He says, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Let me see." So I looked at it and I opened it up and I drank it. So what happened was that was enough for 5 people.
I was about to say, I'm like, that's a whole
Yeah.
lot.
And he freaked out. And I was gone for 4 days. I almost killed him. I said, for some reason, he reminded me of a frog. I don't even know what that means, but I said, "I think I'm going to kill you." And he said, "Oh, look at that lamp." And changed my thoughts. And then I went into this whole thing, this journey, And then I started to want to do the tripping every weekend and things like that. So I started doing that. And that
So,
got old.
so taking enough for 5 people and having a 4-day trip wasn't enough to scare the shit out of you, but you were like, "No, this sounds good."
No, it didn't even look at that as fear, And what happened then, I wound up doing psilocybin. I wound up doing, mushrooms. I wound up doing peyote, mescaline. I did most of the psychedelics. So anyway, and I did it just to expand my mind and get high. All right. As time went on, everything escalated. Of course, that's what happens with people that become drug addicts. But meanwhile, in my journey, I wasn't getting to a point where, see, when you do drugs and alcohol and stuff, it takes time to develop the real sickness of it. It's a double-edged sword. In the beginning, it's fun, and your mind is expanding and all this kind of stuff. But that turns on you, okay? And if you keep doing it, it will definitely turn on you. So what I know, I wind up doing 8 plays in the theater, performing arts, kabuki theater. I wrote it, developed it. I had my own television show for 5 years on public television.
During this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was no, wait a minute, it wasn't during that time. The public television show when I was clean. The plays is when I was using, and then I threw a concert with James Brown.
Which I have to pause you because that is very interesting. So, like, it was what? Oh my gosh, I want to try and pull it from memory. It was the USA Flea Market USA.
Right. It was Flea Market USA. My student owned the market. He wanted me to buy a booth. I didn't want to buy a booth. I told him I want to work for you. So he says, "Well, sensei, let's teach." He said, what are you going to do? And I know you're karate, but I don't know about business. I says, "Well, you tell me what you want me to do. I'll fill this place up." Okay. With, they were selling boots and stuff like that. And he said, "Well, how much money do you want?" I said, now this was 1980, 81. I said, "I want $1,000 a week." He said, "What?" I said, "Tell you what, you give me $250 a week. And if I meet all the quotas I say I'm going to meet, I want $1,000 a week." Well, 3 months I had that. All right. Then I was doing the security also. I had all my black belts were doing the security there. And also, what happened was they said they wanted the biggest grand opening. So I had a friend of mine. I used to have a black belt security company that I did at this Agora Ballroom. It was called. This guy who ran it knew James Brown. So I says, well, James Brown would be perfect. And that was when James Brown was the lowest of his career around that era. And I said, that's great. So it cost $20,000 to have James Brown to come. Anyway, I said, look, we need a theme. So meanwhile, there was the riots in Liberty City and Overtown. That's in the black community. Nobody wanted to go there and shop. You know, it was only white people, Hispanics. Nobody wanted to go there. So I says, okay, so we need a theme. We're revitalizing Liberty City and Overtown. And what I did is I got the SBA people, Small Business Association, to actually teach people how to run a business, how to buy wholesale, how to do, how to keep books and all this other kind of stuff. And I went to all the deacons, all the churches and everything. I'm dancing in the churches and getting the whole community together because most of my black belts were black. And that's what I used to teach in that community. So a lot of people knew me there. Anyway, I wanted to invite President Reagan to come to the flea market for the grand opening. Of course, everybody laughed at me. They thought it was out of my mind, which I don't know if that was a statement or an observation, but I says, okay. So I sent the letter to the White House. Well, believe it or not, 2 weeks later, matter of fact, the letter's in the book so you can see it from the White House because nobody believes anything you tell them anyway. So he sent the letter back saying, well, I'm sorry, we can't, the president can't make it due to scheduling, but they're going to send a representative. And, they check you out really thoroughly before they send anybody, especially to a flea market grand opening. They checked me out, and they went to the Martin Luther King Foundation, and they presented me with the Martin Luther King Award on stage. And I know this is hard to believe, but I got the videos and everything to show. The press said there was 60,000 people showed up. We had a parking lot as far as your eye can see in every direction. There was people shoulder to shoulder. It was huge. So that was that part. And so I did a lot of things that were really cool. One thing I did was really interesting. It was Christmas time, and the owners wanted something that drive people to the flea market. So what I did was I says, look, I want to dress up as Santa Claus or Rudolph, and I have the balloonist there, and we can dress up as those two characters. And I want to throw flyers out over the city. So he said, no, you can't do that, John. He says, because we'll get tickets for litter. I said, no, I don't think you understand. I want to throw your money out over the city. They said, what are you talking about? I made a sticker and I put it on the dollar bill and I turned it into a flyer. Well, the money didn't stay down long enough to be considered litter.
Fair.
So we were throwing it out of the balloon. We would take the balloon all the way down and throw it out all over the city. I was on every television station, every radio station. And that's how we went up 4 times.
Do you remember how much you spent?
5,000. I remember exactly.
So $5,000 and $5,000 in $1 bills with stickers on them.
And we threw a couple of fives in there, by the way,
Fair. But I mean, what brilliant marketing. If you think about it, that's brilliant marketing.
Well, I always had a mind for all that stuff. I have to be honest with you. I was thinking about this the other day. I think the psychedelics really opened up my mind to do a lot of things. I had my own circus there at the flea market. When the circus was in town and charging a lot of money, we charged $2.50. We had all kinds of things that I was doing that nobody was doing. So, that's how I and I was using back then. So, but as time went on, my addiction started to grow, and you don't realize it, and also what happened was I started to sell drugs. Okay. And then I used to do collection work for the smugglers, and I did a lot I never got arrested, which was amazing. All right. Cause I used to teach the police department. I also used to teach the DEA. So I had a double life. I used to help the kids in the neighborhood not to use drugs, not to do that. And here I am getting high. So and that's what happened. What you see is not what you get sometimes with people that use. I
Of
know
course.
doctors, I know lawyers, I know all kinds of people that own big corporations, actors, it's just people.
Yeah.
Okay. So my family, I was getting out of control. So my family did an intervention on me. That's when people get together and they try to get you into treatment. So I'm wondering who's doing an intervention on them, My uncle threw my wedding when I was 20, and the caterer insulted him in front of the family, so he killed him. So the next morning, I had to leave town with my new bride because the cops were coming to my grandmother's house, and she's throwing guns down to shoot. I mean, it was that kind of a family relationship. So we left town, and that's how my journey started with all that stuff. I mean, I did so many different things in this journey. It was like crazy, but they did an intervention on me anyway. And I was 37 years old.
So a lot of time had passed then.
Oh, a lot of time had passed. So I had a lot of time to screw up my life. I was married 4 times. Oh,
In
3
that
times.
time? In that
No,
from
not in that time. At that time, I think I was married twice.
Okay.
Then I got in recovery. I was married one more time. And then I got married again. And now it's 29 years we're together. I finally got it right. I'll
Well,
put it
sometimes
that
it
way.
takes a few tries.
Thanks to recovery.
Yeah.
Anyway, they wanted me to go into treatment. I'm saying, who's doing it? They should be going to treatment, not me. They're selling drugs. This guy's killing people, and they want me to go to treatment. So I said, okay, I go to get everybody off my back, and I went into treatment. I didn't think I had to be there. I had some coke in my sock. I went into the bathroom, do a few hits, and then I went in with dark sunglasses, walking around in the treatment center. And I remember being in group, and they were asking me to share and tell them my deepest secrets and all my stuff about myself. I said, I have to kill you if I did that. So um, I was really nasty. I never unpacked my suitcase. I always was taking my suitcase and going to the elevator to leave. And they always would, my family knew the owners of the treatment center. So they kept pulling me back and talking to me. And anyway, I went in December 4th is my clean date. I'm coming up on 40 years in recovery. And I didn't think I would get 40 minutes. So here I am 40 years later in recovery. And what wound up happening was I wanted to go home during Christmas time. And they said no. Well, if you want to know, if you think an addict's doing well, just tell them no. And then you can see how he's really doing.
Mm.
So I got angry, but I didn't just get angry, I got rageful. So I went into my room, I punched the door, I threw things around, and I didn't want to go. I said, "Look, I want to see my kids." I was a lie. My friends would come over and give me a Christmas card with cocaine in it. And that's why I really wanted to go home. I wanted to get high. So anyway, I remember the therapist telling me, "Hey, John, do you ever pray on your knees?" I said, "Look, I'm a recovering Catholic. I got calluses on my knees." I said, "Forget about that. What do you mean? God don't hear me? What about if I'm standing in a closet? Would he hear me?" So he said, "No, how about humility?" So I said, right. But I kept thinking I was in a lot of pain. I started to clear up. It was about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks of treatment. And all the pain and all the emotion, how I hurt myself, how I hurt my kids, how I hurt my wife, my family, it got really bad. And I said, let me try to get down on my knees. So this is the interesting part. I went to get down on my knees and I couldn't get my knee down. And, I still feel that's really interesting. Every time I talk about it, I still feel it. So it's kind of wild. And I had to push my knee down. And then I had to push my other knee down. And I said, look, I don't know if it's God, energy, aliens, whoever you are. Okay, if you take this pain away from me, I'll do whatever you want. Well, let me tell you, CK, it went away like it never was there. I don't know about you or anybody else out there. That never happened to me. It'd take hours or days sometimes for me to get rid of this stuff. And it went away. And I tried to get it back. And it wouldn't come back. That was my spiritual awakening in treatment. And after that, I wanted to help people. And I always did want to help people. Addicts are not really bad people. They just do bad things, So I continued the journey, and I don't want to tell the whole story because I want them to get my book, The Kid from the South Bronx.
Yes, of course.
Never gave up. So it's my whole story, how my therapist betrayed me, how my doctor betrayed me, how I opened up a treatment center, 14 months clean with no money. And a friend of mine gave me the money to open it up. And it's a whole story that goes on. And then I got beat out of my treatment center. And I only went to the 9th grade. So I had to go get a GED. And I had to go back to school. And I had to do all these different things. It was quite traumatizing. But well, I might as well tell the story a little bit so it makes a little sense. What happened to me was I was homeless when I started my journey at 37 because my wife and we got divorced after 9 months. I couldn't do it. She kept on doing drugs, and I was living there with the kids, and I couldn't take it anymore. So I left. And my friend owned a hotel, and he gave me a room. And I had a room with 2 beds, and I had a little warmer, a little stove. And I had a bicycle somebody loaned me. And I had a jar where I used to put quarters in when I had quarters. And I was getting calls from people. Hey, John, I need a kilo of Coke. Hey, John, I need some collection work. I said, no, man, I'm in recovery. I can't do this anymore. So long story short, I came up with an idea after 14 months. And I told the guy I had this famous doctor that wanted to open up a treatment center. But I lied. I really didn't have him. He was my doctor, but I never spoke to him. So he said, well, how much do you need? Now, the only thing I knew about treatment centers was I was in a treatment center. So I says, $250,000. He said, you got it if you can get him. Well, I walked into his office, the doctor, and I says, listen, I got $250,000. How would you like to open up your own treatment center? He was a comedian also. And he says, hey, I was just thinking about that. So anyway, long story short, we opened up the treatment center. And here I am standing in North Miami General Hospital. We had a floor of the hospital. I'm looking around. I'm 14 months clean. I only went to the 9th grade, and here I am. I own a treatment center, which was pretty wild. And I'm walking around. I'm looking at all this, and we started to build it up, and I designed it and did all that stuff with him. And because of my martial arts training in the Eastern philosophy, I was into alternative medicine in the beginning. And anyway, I hired my therapist to help me to be the program director. He was the program director at Mount Sinai Hospital. And he was making $29,000 a year. I gave him $50,000. So he came on board. But the problem is he didn't like the fact that I was his client and I was his boss. But it had nothing to do with me being his boss. I was just grateful for him helping me. Anyway, long story, we were packed, and one day we couldn't make payroll. I said, that's impossible. They said, well, your friend that gave the money is stealing. I said, how could he be stealing? He doesn't even have access to the money. So what my friend told me that they're stealing. I said, no, they're in recovery. Now I'm a street kid. I mean, I don't, how do you look at that, So I says, all right. So I went into the doctor's office. I says, are you stealing? He says, he put his head down. He says, I got a sex addiction. I've been buying apartments for girls, and I've been paying for hookers and all this stuff. But meanwhile, the therapist guy, went to the hospital and says, look, this guy's no good, meaning me. We're going to leave if you don't tell him that he's got to get out of here. Long story, they offered me, they forced me to sign a contract to get out of there. And they gave me, otherwise my friend would make no money. They would change corporations. And what would happen was he would get to count receivables if I signed. I said, okay. So I signed. And now, what am I going to do? I have to stay there and they let me stay there. They gave me the outpatient clinic, which had 3 clients. And they figured they'd get rid of me that way. Oh, he did. Not the doctor. The doctor didn't want nothing to do with the business. So, but he just put his head down and allowed it to happen, actually. So anyway, I had an idea about how to take the clients from inpatient, run them through the outpatient. So this way we have a complete flow of patients coming in and going out and all this. Anyway, I had to stay there. I went to school. I got my GED. I went to school. I got 300 hours of addiction training. And then I had to have 6,000 hours of supervision. So I had to stay there for 3 years. I had to swallow my pride, my ego, my anger, and stay there. They made millions of dollars. I made a salary. And I never got a contract where, I didn't have a lawyer. I wasn't too swift. I'm a street kid. You cheat me, I punch you in the face. So that doesn't work in corporate world.
It doesn't.
It does, but it doesn't.
Yes, it does, but it doesn't. Yes. On that note, we're going to take a quick break.
Life in Stitches by CK Sims. Available for purchase in paperback and ebook on all major platforms. Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Just before the break, we were talking with John about his experience with getting a $250,000 loan from a friend. He partnered up with a doctor and brought in his therapist to be the program director. And well, that didn't turn out so great, did it?
No.
No.
Anyway, what wound up happening was they took over the treatment center and they pushed me out and they gave me the outpatient clinic. And what I said earlier was that what we did was I came up with an idea how to transition people out of inpatient to outpatient so they have longer care. And they made millions and I made the salary. But I had to get 6,000 hours of supervision in order to get my certification for doing therapy back then.
Mm.
Today you need a master's degree. All you needed back then was a GED, which I had. So anyway, after the 3 years, okay, and I got my supervision, and a lot of other things happened in between. He always tried to get rid of me, and things happened and all kinds of stuff, but he couldn't get rid of me. And I got my certification, and I went into the office. I closed the door, and I says, I'm going to rearrange your face that no plastic surgeon could put together. I was fed up with it. I says, and then I'm going to call my uncle, and then he's going to shoot your knees out. Now, they knew who my uncle was because my uncle had a crack addiction, and we put him in treatment. And the story goes, funny story, I was in my office, therapist comes running in and says, your uncle. I said, what did he do? I thought he hurt somebody. He said, no. He's telling everybody all the people he killed. I said, I told you what he did for a living, you know? And anyway, so he knew, this therapist knew who my uncle was. Within 2 hours, I had my contract. Anyway, they bought me out for $80,000, which was like a joke. I didn't care. You know, I got what I needed to move on. I learned everything about the business, everything, from stem to stern. Then my friend who gave me the original money said, I have another guy who wants to open up a treatment center, but he wants a business plan. So I said, I don't know how to make a business plan. So he made the business plan for me. I went to West Palm Beach to meet the guy from Miami, and I forget the business plan. So what happened was, I was 2 minutes away, so I had to go anyway. So I went in. I said, look, I forgot the business plan. I'm sorry. We'll make it for another time. He said, no. Threw a napkin at me. He says, tell me what you need the money for. So I did. And we opened up another treatment center. After a year, I made it successful. I hired my sponsor, Narcotics Anonymous, and I hired him as the clinical director. He was only making $25,000 a year. I made him $50,000 a year. And the guy said, I'm firing you. I said, what do you mean? You can't fire me. I'm your partner. Read your contract. I didn't have a lawyer. I never read the contract. I just signed it. I was so happy to have a treatment center. Well, anyway, I was going to throw him through the window, which I didn't. And I told my sponsor, come on, let's go. He doesn't know how to run this program. He says, I can't leave. So I just bought a house. I can't pay for the house if I leave. So there's another trauma. So I got all my stuff, put it in a box, sat on the trunk of my car and cried. I couldn't believe this happened again. Then I wound up working for a 55-bed indigent facility that had HIV people and dual diagnosed people, and people that had substance abuse and mental health issues. And there was an old therapeutic community where they put signs on your neck if you're acting out, and they tear you down and then try to build you back up. And I said, this is crazy. So I left after a little while. And the girl I was with says, "Why don't you open up your own treatment center?" I said, "Oh, no, I don't want anything to do with treatment centers." They says, I said, "Besides, I only have $300 in the bank." My friend owned a little 750 square foot building. I says to him, "Well, how much do you want for this? How much do you got?" So I says, "I only have $300 in the bank." He said, "Tell you what, run it for a couple of months, make some money, pay me $300 a month." Then I got my friend to be my partner, and I never did business really. And when guys used to give me their money, I used to put it in my pocket. I didn't have any books. So I said, "Look, I'll give you 50% of the business." So he said, "Well, where's your books?" I said, "I don't have any books." "What books?" So he said, "Well, how do you know people paid you?" I said, "They'll pay." "Hey, you crazy? They're addicts. They ain't paying you." I said, "Oh, no, they'll pay. As long as I have enough for rent and food, I'm good." Anyway, he took over the business part. We brought his son. He did the internet at the time. And we started to grow. And we had bill collectors chasing us for a couple of years. And we couldn't make payroll sometimes. And then in 2012, we wound up selling it for $45 million. We had 7 buildings and 147 employees. And we became a brand, a holistic brand. Because what I did there, developed there, that we all developed, nobody did. We did hyperbaric medicine, which is oxygen under pressure to help heal the brain from drugs and alcohol. We did acupuncture. We did lymphatic massage to get the drugs out on the cellular level, micronutrient testing, gut testing, amino acid therapy, sound and light therapy, colonics. We did aromatherapy, and we also took people to do ibogaine. Now, ibogaine is a bush from West Africa that detoxes people from heroin in 24 hours. And that was done in St. Kitts, not done in Florida because you can't, it's a Schedule I drug in the United States. And I worked with a Dr. Deborah Mash. She was a neuromolecular scientist from the University of Miami School of Medicine. I don't know how I got in touch with all these people, and it's crazy. And, you watch, they said beyond your wildest dreams. Well, my life I became a leading expert on psychedelic medicine, a leading expert in addiction and mental health, and alternative medicine. So that's where the journey took me. And see, what I'm doing, and my son almost died from this disease. So did my wife. So did I. And I said, there's got to be a better way because there's only a 5 to 8, maybe a 10% recovery rate. And it's terrible what's going on. So I own, part owner of JC's Recovery Center, which is a faith-based program, which I added alternative treatments. We do micronutrient testing, we do gut testing, we do red light therapy, we do hyperbarics if they want, we do holotropic breathing, we do cold plunge, we do acupuncture, we do heavy metal testing, we do things that nobody's doing in the industry even today, and we're getting incredible results as I got before.
It's interesting, the scalability, right? So like popping back real quick to when you finally opened your last sort of practice, if you will, you and your partner. You had been kind of screwed over there. Not kind of. You had been screwed over twice already by business partners. And like he had a building, 750 square feet. Your friend came on. He took over the business side. You had said collectors were chasing you. You didn't make payroll. But then, what was the year that you opened this?
Question, 1996.
So we're looking at 10, 12, 16 years. So in 16 years, you took this passion, this want to help others and do it holistically from a $300 venture to a $45 million.
And we were making a lot of money in the last, let me say, before I sold, 6, 7 years before I sold, we were making really good money.
Which, I mean, basic business, I think you would have had to have been to be able to
Well,
sell for that.
we took in at 36 to 40 million a year.
That's insane. That's insane.
I know.
And
we never chased the money. We always wanted to help the client.
But see, and that's the thing, right? So like you had made a comment as well about as long as your bills are paid and you have a roof over your head or you're fed was something that you said. That was your only sort of focus when you went into this. But it's interesting how the things that happened to you when you were younger, use of drugs and the things that you went through in your like, I had this thought when you were talking about it, like you didn't know why this was happening or why these things were going down. And I just had this thought, it was almost like you were churning your purpose, right? And
Uh-huh.
sometimes we have to go through things to churn our purpose, to figure out what our purpose is and how we're going to make it happen. So 2012, you sold for $45 million, which is fantastic. You had said during you're having technical issues.
Yeah, technically, my wife was doing a shake. Well, the
Ah,
sound.
well, it's always good to have a shake. Um, so I want to pop back real quick. You were in, and so I see the correlation here. There's a correlation here. So you were in the rehab. The therapist had told you about getting you down on your knees, humility, like prayer, if you will, and you couldn't put your knees down, and that was pain, right? You were in pain.
Emotional pain. When you stop doing drugs, all the emotions float to the ceiling.
Well, because you're avoiding, and I
Of
think this
course.
is where it starts to get out of control. Is you're chasing the high and also avoiding.
Right. It's like a dog running away from its tail.
Yes,
You don't go too far.
exactly. But you said you prayed out in that
Right.
moment, and in that moment it disappeared. Now we're looking at what, 40 years later? Is it 40 years later, roughly?
40 years. December 4th, will be 40 years.
So now you're involved in the JC house.
Yeah, and it's a faith-based program.
That's the correlation I'm making. So would you say that during rehab was God a big part of your
That's an
recovery?
interesting question. I'll tell you what happened. So when I started going to these meetings, I didn't believe in them. I didn't want to be there. I told them I wouldn't even get high with them. What am I doing here? But I went anyway. And I kept going to the meetings every day. And I used to say to them after a year, I'm saying, I still don't feel right. And he says, did you use today? I said, no. He says, well, you're already feeling good. You're already ahead of the game. You didn't use, you're ahead of the game, which was true. Because when I used, I went away for 3 days at a time. I got really stupid and, all kinds of things. So, and now I'm a chaplain for the North Miami Police Department also. I'm a traumatologist. I work with people, officers that have been in shootings, people coming back from Iraq, vets coming back from Iraq, Afghanistan, women that have been raped, molested. And I do that kind of work too, which I love. So when they tell you in a program, Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, that's what happened to me. And to answer your question about God, when I was in a meeting and a guy came over to me and says, because I yelled out, God, I don't want to hear about it. Come here to join a new religion. I said, and an old timer came up to me and says, hey, John, how about G-O-D? I said, look, man, I know how to spell. So he said, no, good, orderly direction. I said, that I can do. That was my God for the first 2 years.
Interesting.
And today I have a God of my understanding. So the bottom line is it takes time to get recovery. And it's not just about the drugs and the alcohol. It's about living a lifestyle of recovery. What people don't understand is that there are a lot of other reasons for depression and anxiety besides trauma and other things. For instance, this is what I lecture about. Depression and anxiety, a lot of it comes from the gut.
Mm-hmm.
That's called your second brain. Okay. I knew about that 20 years ago. I was always ahead of the curve. And what happens with the gut, you can have leaky gut syndrome, H. pylori infection, low testosterone, high testosterone, hyperglycemia, low thyroid. These are all closed head injuries. These are all precursors for depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and behavioral problems. But your audience, please don't believe a word I tell you. Go look it up for yourself. So we're not, as treatment centers, we're 70 years behind the times. We keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And that's why I got involved with, I work with scientists and researchers and clinicians and geneticists from all over the world. And that's how I got on the research team. So like I said earlier, I'm in 80 medical scientific peer-reviewed journals. And most people don't even understand what that means. Certainly I didn't. Okay. Is where, you're part of a team and the head guy writes the paper, We all contribute. And then it goes in front of a bunch of doctors, scientists, and researchers. All right. They look at your paper, they make corrections. And then after they correct, if it's okay, if you compute, if you can improve, if you can prove efficacy of what you're talking about, then they publish it. And each different papers have different levels of quality and all this other kind of stuff. Anyway, so I'm really blessed. I work with Dr. Blum. He is the geneticist who found the main addiction gene, which is the DRD2-ALE1 variant gene. All right. And if just because you have that gene doesn't mean you have a sentence to become an addict, okay, means you're predisposed to become one, but such a thing as epigenetics means the social environment can change the gene expression. So, and there's a bunch of other genes that are connected to that gene, but it's the main gene. Now, here I am talking to you about this stuff. I'm a kid from the South Bronx, went to the 9th grade, went to school. I didn't get any licenses. I got certifications because I didn't believe what the schools were teaching. They were behind the times too. And I wound up getting a doctorate degree, an honorary doctorate degree from Sinai University for all the work I've accomplished and did in the communities and stuff like that. I would never believe this would happen to me. And I tell people, when I do group, I tell people, look, man, I'm a street kid in gangs, sold drugs, did all this kind of stuff. All right. My family was that kind of family. All right. It doesn't matter. And I had hardly any education. I got molested. I had all these things that can happen to you. I got betrayed by doctors and therapists. Okay. But you still can be successful if you never give up. And if I may, which I like to do if it's okay with you, I'd like to read a little. I don't have the other book, but this is the book. Okay, forget about this thing across. Was just I changed the cover. The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. And what I did was I usually read this little thing. I'm looking for glasses, if I may.
Of course.
And this is how I want to help people. It says, there is one thing in this world, one special lesson, one constant that has guided me through the turbulent waters of life. Most people know this infinite rule, but they ignore it or simply do not follow their life lessons. That is, no matter what, no matter the circumstances, the obstacles, the people that get in our way, or things that slow us down, follow this one simple rule. Never give up on your dreams, never let go of your passions, and especially never give up on yourself or a God of your understanding. My name is John Giordano, and I'm a recovering addict who turned $300 into $45 million.
And that's one part of your success, right? Like that's just one thing in your long line.
And you know what the best part? I got a God of my understanding, and I became a better human being, and I help God's kids.
There you go.
That's the most important part. The rest of money is money. And it didn't change me or my partners, which was really interesting.
Money is a tool, not everything.
Yeah, but some people act like a tool.
Yeah, that is for sure. What's interesting to you though is that listening to your story, like I resonate with a lot of it. Like my life wasn't, my early days was not like yours. But the not giving up and being able to actually change your very existence, your very fabric of who you are as a person and your environments and all of that stuff. It's true. And I've done it, right? I mentioned to you earlier that I have anxiety. I have type 2 bipolar disorder. This is a chemical imbalance in my brain. I've been tested. My gut's been tested. All of these things. I do have some gut issues, so I'm very familiar with that, the gut-brain connection. But I've always been terrified of doing anything that would put me in a situation like right now. And last year, some major things happened at work, and I just got fed up with working for somebody else and the 9-to-5 grind. And I said, I want more for me. I deserve more for me. But no one's going to hand that to you. You got to do it for yourself. So absolutely. I just started putting myself out there. On December 31st of 2023, just on New Year's Eve, I recorded my first podcast. And I didn't know when I recorded it if I'd ever put it out. And I can't tell you, just from, like, I'm not successful yet. Like, it's a small podcast. We're not generating money yet. It's fine. I'm a consultant now. I'm doing work I'm enjoying. That's great. But what I want to say is that just this podcast, first of all, got me over my fear. Like, I'm on the internet. People can like just pull up and watch me talk anytime they want. That is something that would literally paralyze me in fear. But the piece that I like is having a platform where people like you can tell your stories. And if somebody listens, I have 42 subscribers on YouTube. If one of those 42 people listen and are inspired by your story, and that changed some small part of their life, then it's worth it.
Absolutely. You don't have to look, you don't have thousands of people. If you save one life, how much is a life worth?
Everything.
Right. So
More
the
than
bottom
money.
line is, and fear is false evidence appearing real. FEAR.
I like
And what
that. False?
and what we do is I don't want to curse, but
It's
we
not
F
so.
everything and run. Okay? And that's what addicts do. Okay?
So say that again?
They F everything and run. FEAR. Right? So all these fears that we have is because we feel that people are going to judge us because we judge people.
Yes.
Okay? So we don't want to be judged. Well, guess what? Here comes the judge, because everybody judges something or somebody. It's just like people say, how can you talk about all the sexual stuff and you felt good and did this? I says, because first of all, I don't have any more shame in my game.
Love that.
Okay. I have the courage to do that because it's not about John. It's about you.
And
So
that's what I think is what I gravitate to in people is the vulnerability, right? Is you're already opening up vulnerability, talking about being molested, but then to make that comment on top of that, that's an extra level of vulnerability that would take. If vulnerability and courage to me are the same, like they're one and the same. So I think there are probably many people who were molested in their lives who have dual feelings surrounding that experience.
absolutely.
Right?
I deal with people like that. I treat people like that. And when I tell them, I says, let me ask you a question. Was it a moment, even if it was 1,000th of a second, that it felt good? They go, nobody ever asked me that question.
No one ever
I
thinks
said,
of it.
because when you touch an area in your body that's sensitive, you're going to get a flash of feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
Even though what's going on is horrific and shameful and guilty and all this other kind of stuff that goes with that. Okay. And then people beat themselves up because I know I beat myself up. I said, there's something's wrong with me. I have evil inside of me. I even went to a priest and asked him to do extremunction on me and get the evil out. He gave me 10 Hail Marys and 5 Our Fathers, and he said, you'll be fine. People don't talk about this stuff. You see? And when you do therapy with somebody and you talk about your stuff, see, in school they teach you don't disclose. Well, how the hell am I going to relate to you if I can't even disclose?
Yes.
It
In school, they
doesn't even
do
make
say that in therapy school, they do tell you that a therapist should never disclose.
right.
Because it always has to be, the patient. I get the logic to a degree, but I also get and can appreciate and I'll swear, fuck the system mentality when it comes to helping others. Everything you learn in a book, yes, there's value that you're going to learn in school for sure, without question. But some of these like really restrictive rules, sometimes it's not going
Well,
to help
look,
everybody.
I'm a result player. All
Yeah.
right. When somebody tells me, oh, you shouldn't do that. So let me ask you a question. How's your recovery rate with your patients? Oh, not that good. Maybe you need to take a look at that.
And
Your methodology may not be working for you very well.
well, because sometimes it's too structured, and I think people need to be able to connect with someone at like
But how are you going to connect if you're up here and they're down here?
yeah.
They used to have it where you were required, all right, if you work in a treatment center, to wear a tie and a suit if you're doing therapy. So what is that? What is that set up? That sets up, I'm the guy that's smarter than you, better than you, and knows more than you, and you're down here.
The power of
Well,
balance.
if you got, how do you get on the same level as somebody?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you see, the mental health people took over the addiction field, and unfortunately, most of them don't know because I teach them. Most of them don't know anything about addiction. They're going from a mental health. No, most addicts, if not all, have a mental health condition. Okay, that's number one. But number two is they're all human beings too.
That's
And
I think that's,
everything is about rapport
yeah,
and relationships. Okay, you can't be in rapport with somebody if you don't relate to that person.
I agree.
So I remember teaching a group therapy class in one of the colleges, and we gave a fake scenario going around, and one of the therapists said, "Well, John, how does that make you feel?" And I said, "You know what? With that kind of question, I wouldn't even let you treat my dog." I said, "You're not relatable. What do you mean? How does it make me feel? I just got molested and stuff, and you're telling me how did that make you? How do you think it made me feel? What are you talking about? Where's the where? How are you relating to me? They're not relatable, So I have my issues with that. I mean, the mental health people say, well, the addiction people don't know about mental health. The addiction people say that uh, mental health people say they don't know about mental health. The addiction people say they don't know about addiction, which is true.
There's a
But how
disconnect.
about you learn, put it all together? See, I know about medications. I know about mental health issues. I know about bipolar. I know about I know all of this stuff already. So I learned all that. So I made it my business to be in both camps so I can blend it together. I know when I'm looking at somebody that's schizoaffective disorder. Oh, I know when I have somebody that's a bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. I know all about this stuff, but a lot of the addiction people were never taught that. I made it my business to go and learn that. How to
A lot
identify,
of people have benefited from that, I'm sure.
huh? Oh, yeah. Well, I benefited from it. I got to understand me.
Well, and
When you understand you'll understand everybody
the
else.
really interesting thing is that super quick because we're at time, but 35, I tried to take my life. I was over. It was done. I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. And then I failed. Things worked out in a short stay unit for 3 days. And then I got out and I went to school for counseling psychology because I needed to learn how to understand what was going on. And it was just a 2-year program. It wasn't a bachelor's or anything like that. And during that process, I was able to fix up here and like completely change everything about my life because I understood why things happened the way they did. And for me, it was all negative self-talk, like low self-esteem, negative self-talk from childhood. And
That's right.
cognitive restructuring, going in and actually changing those thoughts over time took me from being a very negative person who lived in depression and despair and
Well, if you're negative, you attract negativity.
exactly.
If you want to get really become a good therapist today, NLP, neuro-linguistic program. I have a master's in that. Hypnotherapy. I also have that. Holotropic breathing and nutrition.
Nutrition's big. People
Yeah.
don't realize
And
that
exercise.
exercise is also massive.
Well, because I'm the martial arts. So, and that's how I couch it like a pizza. There's spirituality, there's career, and you go down the line and you see where you're deficient, and you take a little bit from here, put it over here, and you balance the whole pie.
Yep.
And I believe that's how life works.
Well, and hence the holistic.
Right. Comprehensive approach.
So the book is called The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. If
Right.
you
And then
head over to John J,
the letter J.
letter J, just the letter J,
.com.
Giordano.com, it is a treasure trove of so much, like incredible, incredible stuff. You can read for probably days on there. There's he has snippets from television programs he's been a part of. He has his books on his website. You can contact him there. You can learn more about the faith-based programs at the JC House. It's honestly, and he has a link to his book. So I ask my listeners and whoever listens to this, go buy this book. I'm going to go buy this book. I want to read this book now. This is what you've made happen. So this one, so your link's broken, just as an FYI, but for buy on Amazon on your website.
And my link is broken.
I click it and it tells me page is not found. But
Page is not found. Where? At what part?
when you go to your books, The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up, the buy on Amazon link, it's not found on Amazon.
Oh, okay. I'll fix that.
It's probably just, but I'm just going to Google it or go to Amazon directly. The Kid.
Yeah, you go to Amazon has it. That's because they changed publishing companies.
Yep, I see it there. So The Kid from South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. And it's available on Kindle, and it's also available on paperback and hardcover. And I won't quote you.
It's going to be audio soon. It's going to be audio. I'm putting it on audio too.
I've never listened to an audiobook, but I really want to. I want to try. I don't know why. I love reading. So
Me too.
I can sit down and read a book in a day. Like that's how I am. So you are an excellent guest. I love what you've done with your life. I love what you're continuing to do with your life. And just once again, thank you so much for coming on my show and sharing your story.
You're a good host.
Thank
so
you.
Remember, there are no failures in life, only lessons.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. So thank you very much for being here. To everyone at home, I'll catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.